Imagine waking up in the morning and before you even open your eyes, a specific person is already there in your mind. You drink coffee, you go to work, you try to concentrate, but somehow it's still there. As if he were living in his thoughts without paying rent. Why does this happen? Would it be love? Obsession? Or is there something deeper behind this mysterious phenomenon? In this video, we'll dive into one of the brightest minds in psychology, Carl Gustav Jung. His studies have revolutionized the way we understand the unconscious, relationships, and the invisible connections that bind us to others. And today, you'll find out why, according to Jung, a person can just not get out of your head, even when everything in you wants to forget them. Get ready to explore concepts such as archetypes, synchronicity, and shadow in a clear, direct, and fully connected way with your reality. Perhaps, by the end of this video, you'll never think the same way about your most insistent thoughts, or about that person who insists on staying there, even in silence. And before we continue, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any content that helps you better understand your mind, your emotions, and your relationships. Here, you will find deep reflections, but always explained in a simple and practical way. So why does this person keep coming back, like an echo that refuses to disappear? What did Carl Jung actually discover about this kind of psychic connection? Stay with me because the answer can change everything you think about yourself and about it. Have you ever had the feeling that someone is chasing you, but not physically, but in your thoughts? No matter what you're doing the dishes, driving, listening to music, even at times when everything should be peaceful, that person shows up. Sometimes with sweet memories, other times with heartaches or even unresolved situations. But why, after all, does this happen? Carl Jung believed that our conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg. Most of what we feel, think, and react to is anchored in the unconscious, a deep, mysterious, and powerful layer that holds everything we don't see but feel. That's where the symbols, the hidden desires, the traumas, the emotional patterns, and, yes, the psychic connections we have with other people. According to Jung, not all the connections we make throughout life are casual. Sometimes a person appears to reveal something about ourselves. It acts as a mirror, reflecting parts of our personality that we still don't fully understand. That's why she scores so much. It's not just about what she did or didn't do, but about what she represents in our internal universe. Maybe it represents something you need to develop. Courage, lightness, intensity, freedom. Or maybe it symbolizes something you fear you face. Rejection, abandonment, control, vulnerability. Jung called this projection, when we project onto another person what we don't yet recognize onto ourselves. And it is precisely this projection that creates a kind of emotional magnetic field, where the mind is trapped, spinning around that figure as if it were impossible to escape. In addition, Jung talked a lot about synchronicity, those events that seem like coincidences, but that carry such a strong symbolic meaning that they make us wonder if the universe is trying to tell us something. It could be a dream about the person, a song that plays at the right moment, a name that comes up repeatedly, a familiar smell in the air. These small events feed the feeling of connection and make her presence feel even more alive within you. But this constant presence does not always indicate that she should return to her life. Sometimes what is stuck is not the person himself, but the meaning he had, or still has in his process of emotional growth. You're not thinking about her for nothing. Your mind is trying to resolve, to integrate, to understand. And in this process, it becomes a key, a fundamental piece of a puzzle that is asking to be assembled. Often, the more we resist thinking about someone, the more that someone infiltrates our thoughts. This happens because the unconscious does not understand the no. Everything we repress comes back with double force. That is why, even trying to forget, the memory persists. And this is the invitation that Jung makes to us. Instead of running away, how about looking inside? How about understanding why this presence is so strong? What is she trying to show you about yourself? Because deep down, it's not about her. It's about what she woke up, about what you still need to welcome, heal, or transform. And this is precisely where one of Jung's most intriguing concepts comes in, something that may explain why certain bonds are so intense, almost as if they were written on a plane beyond time and space. Carl Jung called archetypes the primordial and universal images that live in the collective unconscious, a kind of ancestral memory that we all carry regardless of the culture or time in which we live. These archetypes are like invisible molds that influence our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And, surprisingly, they also shape the people we are attracted, scarred, or even obsessed with. When someone comes into our life and leaves such a deep mark that we can't forget, it may be because they have activated a dormant archetype within us. Perhaps she unintentionally assumed the role of the lover, awakening a desire that was never fully lived. Or maybe he embodied the hero or the shadow, challenging us, confronting us, revealing to us aspects that we never had the courage to see in ourselves. That's why we often feel like we've known someone for a long time, even if we've just met them. Because unconsciously, we are reacting to this archetypal pattern that it represents. These encounters are not random. Jung believed that the unconscious guides us to people who can help us, or force us, to grow. And this journey, while not always easy, is profoundly transformative. The mind does not fixate on someone for no reason. It clings to those who have a symbolic role in our inner narrative. And as much as we try to rationalize or minimize it, there is an emotional truth there that needs to be looked at honestly. Often, this mental fixation happens not because that person was the right one, but because they touched something essential. Something that needed to emerge. She was the trigger, the mirror, the spark. It may have been through love, conflict, absence, or even a sudden farewell. What matters is the psychic impact it has made, and what that impact reveals about who you are. Jung also talked about the process of individuation, which is the way to become who we really are, integrating all the parts of our psyche, including those that have been projected onto others. And this process, inevitably, goes through remarkable encounters. People who enter our story to represent something that is missing, something that is left over, something that is out of balance. And when these people leave, what remains is emptiness, and the need to fill that space not with another person, but with awareness. Maybe you're thinking, but I didn't even have a real relationship with her, why do I think so much? And the answer may lie precisely in this, in what did not happen, in what was pending, in what was felt but not lived. Because the unconscious also feeds on unfulfilled potential. Of the what if, then it could have been. And that's often stronger than any story that actually happened. These psychic connections can be so intense that they seem to cross the boundaries of time. As if that person were connected to you by an invisible thread stuck somewhere deep in the soul. And this feeling of continuous connection, even when everything seems to be over, can be one of the greatest mysteries of the unconscious. But what about when this thread does not break even over the years? And when, despite all attempts to move on, it is still there, alive in your mind, in your dreams, between the lines of your life? Perhaps we are dealing with something even more enigmatic, an experience that Jung described with a powerful word, which goes far beyond logic or traditional science. That word is synchronicity, one of the most fascinating concepts proposed by Carl Jung, and one that may explain why certain people just don't get out of your head, even when they are no longer part of your life in a concrete way. Synchronicity manifests itself when seemingly random events occur in such a significant way that you feel, almost instinctively, that it can't just be a coincidence. It's as if the universe is sowing invisible signs between you and that person, even though you haven't spoken to each other for a long time. Imagine being thinking about her, and suddenly, a song that marked the history between you starts playing on the radio. Or someone mentions her name in a conversation, without knowing what is going on inside you. Perhaps you dream about it for several nights in a row, and when you wake up, you feel a strange sensation that something is happening at that very moment, as if there is a connection vibrating beyond matter. For Jung, these events are not random. They are symbolic manifestations of something that is happening at a deep level of the psyche. Synchronicity reveals that there is a hidden order in the apparent chaos of life. And when it involves another person, it is because there is a greater meaning in that bond, even if it does not manifest itself in a practical way. Its presence in your thoughts may be reinforced by these synchronicities, as if something inside, or outside of you is trying to communicate a message. But here's the finer point. Synchronicity isn't a sign that you should go after that person. It does not come to feed illusions, but to bring consciousness. The experience of being mentally attached to someone can be the trigger for an expansion of understanding. It can be a call to review your own journey, heal old wounds, or understand that certain bonds exist not to last, but to awaken. Sometimes, the person who marked your life the most wasn't even who you expected. Nor was it the most present, the most stable, or the most certain. But she was the one who touched something essential. And so, it remains. Even if not physically, it inhabits your internal world. And as long as this psychic cycle is not ended with meaning and maturity, the mind will continue to insist, because there is still something that needs to be recognized. The unconscious mind does not distinguish the past from the present. For her, everything is happening now. So, if there is an unresolved emotion, an unexpressed feeling, a learning that has not yet been assimilated, the unconscious will continue to bring that person back. Not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. Because it is through these mental returns that you are invited to dive deeper into yourself. Maybe you need to forgive. Maybe you need to forgive yourself. You may need to accept that what you have lived, or not experienced, had a purpose, even if it was not the ending you expected. Jung said that every psychic symptom carries a potential for transformation. And thinking insistently about someone can be the symptom that reveals an important transition in their history. That's the beauty and the challenge of synchronicity. It does not obey linear logic. It speaks in the language of the soul. And when this language echoes through memories, dreams, signs, and repetitive thoughts, you are faced with a rare opportunity to understand that that person who does not leave your mind may be the mirror of something much bigger. But how do we know, in fact, if this connection is just a projection of the unconscious, or if there is something else? How to differentiate between emotional attachment and a true inner calling? That's exactly what we're going to explore now, and the answers may surprise you. Distinguishing between a projection of the unconscious and a true connection is not a simple task. After all, the feeling seems so real, so intense, that it's hard to believe that all that could be happening only inside you. But Carl Jung offers us valuable tools to make this distinction, and it all starts with recognizing projections. Projection, for Jung, is the process by which we transfer to another person aspects of our own psyche that we have not yet been able to integrate. In other words, we see in it what we do not yet see in ourselves. It can be a quality we admire, a repressed desire, or even a deep fear. Projection creates an illusion. We feel that we need that person to feel complete, when in fact we are just trying to reclaim a part of ourselves that has been forgotten or repressed over time. That's why certain connections are so overwhelming. Not because the other is special in essence, but because he activates a deep process of internal recognition. When we design, we create an idealized image of the person. And the more distant it is from reality, the stronger the obsession tends to be. Our mind clings to this ideal, believing that there is the answer, the salvation, the perfect fit. But most of the time, we're just trying to fill a void that won't be filled on the outside. This does not mean that the connection has no value. Quite the opposite. Precisely because it touches so deep, it becomes a precious opportunity for self-knowledge. But so that this opportunity does not turn into prolonged suffering, it is essential to make the way back, to get out of the illusion and look within. Ask yourself, what exactly does this person represent to me? What do I admire, desire, or fear in her? What does this presence reveal about myself? When we start answering these questions honestly, something starts to change. The person who once seemed indispensable begins to lose the idealized shine. Not because it stopped being important, but because you started to rescue what you projected onto it. It is at this point that true healing happens, when the psychic energy that was trapped in the other begins to return to you. And with it comes strength, clarity, and freedom. But there is also the other side, the one in which the connection goes beyond projection. Jung recognized that not all intense relationships are the result of illusion. Some do have a deep, mysterious basis, which cannot be explained with psychology alone. They are ties that touch something broader, more archetypal, more spiritual. In these situations, even after the end of physical contact, the person's presence continues to reverberate in an inexplicable way. There is a sense of purpose, of mission unaccomplished, of something that transcends time and space. When this happens, there is no way to force a complete withdrawal. The mind may even try to move on, but the heart insists on coming back. In these cases, the way is not to deny the connection, but to understand it. It's not about running after the person, but about listening to what this bond still has to teach you. Sometimes the lesson is about love, other times about detachment, and at times about faith in something that goes beyond what we can see or control. The most important thing is not to get lost in this process, keeping your feet on the ground as you dive into the depths of the soul. Observe carefully without judging yourself, accepting that some people are here to stay and others just to transform. Both are equally valuable. And if there is a way to begin to free yourself or to find peace within that connection, it starts with a very powerful inner movement. A simple but profoundly transformative gesture that can completely change your relationship with this constant presence in your mind. That transformative movement is integration. The moment when you stop fighting thoughts that keep coming back and begin to understand them as part of your healing process. Instead of asking yourself, how do I stop thinking about this person? You change the question to, what is this person teaching me about myself? From then on, everything changes. To integrate is to welcome. It is to stop seeing the constant presence of someone in your mind as a mistake or an emotional failure. It is to understand that, if it is still there, it is because there is something inside you that still needs to be looked at with affection, with attention. Maybe it's a dream that was abandoned, a desire that was silenced, a feeling that never had space to be truly lived. And that person, with all that he represents, came precisely to activate that dormant part of you. Carl Jung said that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the inner darkness conscious. In other words, true growth happens when we have the courage to look at what we avoid, our pains, emptiness, dependencies, fears. And one of the most powerful ways to awaken this awareness is through relationships, even, or especially, when they exist only in our mind. Someone's mental presence can be like an insistent mirror. It reflects, day after day, the part of us that we don't yet understand. It can reflect neediness, but also a desire for genuine connection. It can reflect insecurity, but also a deep yearning for belonging. It can reflect nostalgia, but also the need to create new meanings. By recognizing all this, you stop being a prisoner of memory and become the author of your own story. This process, however, takes time. It's not about forgetting overnight, nor forcing an emotional closure that isn't ready to happen yet. It's about respecting the cycles of the soul. Understand that there are bonds that only dissolve after they fulfill their symbolic function. Sometimes what you need is not to cut the connection, but to transform it. It can stop being a weight and become a symbol of something bigger, of your strength, of your evolution, of the love you have learned to feel, and perhaps now you are learning to direct it to yourself. In this way, self-observation is fundamental. Pay attention to how your thoughts behave when that person pops into your mind. What do you feel? What do you try to avoid? What do you wish had been different? These answers are valuable clues. They reveal what is still open within you. And that's precisely where the power of integration lies, transforming a painful memory into wisdom, an absence into freedom, an obsession with awakening. It is worth remembering that this process does not have to and should not be solitary. Sometimes, talking to someone you trust or seeking therapeutic support can speed up this understanding. Because when we talk about what holds us inside, we often realize that we are not so alone. And that what seems to be a personal drama is, in fact, a deeply human experience. Over time, what now seems like a mental prison may prove to be a turning point. You begin to realize that you no longer need that person's presence to feel whole. Because what it came to activate, you have already welcomed. What she came to teach, you have already learned. And it is at this point, when the memory stops hurting and starts to inspire, that liberation begins. Not because you forgot about her, but because you finally understood the role she played in your journey. And now, with this awareness in hand, You are ready for the last and most liberating stage of this process? We have finally reached the point of closure, not only of this video, but, who knows, also of a cycle that has been repeating itself within you. Throughout this journey through Carl Jung's ideas, we explore why certain people remain so alive in our thoughts, even when they are no longer present in our lives. We discovered that, more than a simple memory or longing, this mental insistence carries a deep message from our unconscious. You've seen that these connections often have nothing to do with the other person themselves, but with what they've awakened in you: projections, forgotten parts, unfulfilled desires, old wounds, or necessary lessons. He realized that what seems to be an obsession may actually be a call for his own expansion. Jung shows us that nothing is by chance when it comes to the inner world, and that, behind every repetitive thought, there is a possibility of transformation. Through the understanding of archetypes, projection, synchronicity, and integration, we understand that these insistent presences are invitations. Invitations to look within, recognize patterns, welcome emotions, heal memories, and, above all, rediscover parts of ourselves that were forgotten. That person who doesn't leave your mind may have been just a passage, but a passage with a sacred purpose, to wake you up to something that needed to be seen. And now that you know that, the power is in your hands. You are no longer held hostage to memories, nor do you have to keep fighting your own thoughts. Instead, you can start listening to them with curiosity, with respect, with maturity. It can transform pain into clarity, absence into autonomy, and dependence into self-love. Because, in the end, the mind doesn't insist on someone out of cruelty, it insists out of wisdom. And the moment you understand the reason for this presence is the same moment when she begins to lose the weight she carries. From that point on, the memory may even continue to exist, but in a light way, as an honest memory of something that was important, but that no longer defines who you are. You don't have to forget to move on. You just need to integrate, accept what was, learn from what remained, and make room for what is yet to come. Because your story does not end in that bond. It continues, more conscious, stronger, freer. And if this video touched you something, if it made sense on some level, then it was worth it. Take advantage of this moment to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may also be stuck with thoughts that are already asking to be transformed. Remember, everything that insists on coming back is trying to be healed. And sometimes, all it takes is a new look to finally find the peace you are looking for.